Let's compare a $1 pen to a $30 pen. So I went out to find the cheapest and most expensive pens I could. I found this 12 pack for a couple bucks, it's just your everyday pen. And then I went to the fancy pen section and found this one pen that's $30. So let's unbox the cheap pens. Honestly, nothing too crazy, but it gets the job done. And now let's unbox this. Right off the bat, the build quality is insane. Feels nicer to hold, writes somewhat smoother, and follow for more reviews. "2022 is about to be the year that you ace every single one of your classes. So I have a funny little secret. 8 years ago when I was a freshman in high school, I made it my goal to become valedictorian. I was quite frankly obsessed with the goal, and I did it. Looking back, there were roughly 11 different principles that I followed. Now I'm not going to promise that these principles will make you valedictorian, but follow along as I break them down. Your teacher announces the highest and lowest grades on the last exam. Somehow you got the highest. Here's what you did. So back in college, I tried this weird technique called blurting. I pulled out my notes the night before a huge biology exam and reviewed everything for 30 minutes. Then I put my notes away, took out a separate sheet of paper, and wrote down everything that I could remember. Once done, I used a different colored pen to write down everything I forgot, repeated this process, and used other tricks. Follow along. Your friend calls you in the middle of the night. She's crying because she thinks she's gonna fail the test tomorrow. Here's what you do. You tell her to get herself together and to grab a pencil, a piece of paper, and her notes. Now she's not gonna simply reread them. Instead, she's gonna copy down her notes from the hardest units and leave some blanks. After a 30-minute break, she should come back and try to fill this out to the best of her memory. You tell her to review whatever she forgets and to follow Gohar for more tips. Wait a minute, did you really say that in your college essay? Don't worry, you're not alone. I've seen dozens of students make this mistake, and luckily there's one very easy way to catch it. I want to go to Yale University because of its low student to faculty ratio, proximity to the city, amazing math department, and homey feeling. But we know this essay is trash because if you replace Yale with Harvard, the essay still makes sense. It's not specific enough, and here's how you fix that. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Physics. You wake up and throw an apple off your bed to make sure Newton didn't make a mistake. Pleased with your calculations, you put on the same t-shirt from yesterday and run to lecture. Today's class was so easy that you ask for more homework. Next, you skip dinner and run to the library to study with people who are 10 times smarter. By accident, y'all disprove Einstein's theory of relativity. After picking up your Nobel Prize, you end off the night by searching for jobs, watching Big Bang Theory, discovering a new planet, and heading to bed. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Art. You wake up to an influx of job offers. Your parents have never felt prouder. You throw on your overalls, grab your acrylics, and head to the studio. After hours of standing at the canvas and a couple of tears, you finish your latest masterpiece. You call it. Your professor thinks you're a creative genius. After class, you and your friends hit up a vegan joint, talk about underground music nobody's ever heard of, binge season 10 of The Joy of Painting, and head to bed. Here's a mistake way too many students make. They'll be trying to think of a college essay idea, and this is how it'll go. What have other students written about? Costco? Papa John's? Okay, I have an idea. My life is like a watermelon. Nah, that's too weird. My life is like an AirPod. My life is like a bowl of oatmeal. These all sound really weird, right? Don't include object metaphors unless the object has a meaningful connection to your life. Your friend sneaks into your backpack and finds your last exam grade. Here's how you aced it. As you were studying for the exam, you pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down the main concepts. You then went to a friend or a sibling and pretended to teach them these concepts. You imagined they were a little kid and tried to keep your explanations as simple as possible. They would ask questions as you spoke and try to help you find gaps in your knowledge. You reviewed these gaps and followed for more tips. Your friend's gonna go nuts when he sees what you did to ace your last exam. On top of reading your notes, you pulled up a bunch of YouTube videos that covered the exam topics. But you didn't watch them. For each video, you hit the transcript button and copied the text. You pasted it into this tool called ChatGPT and asked it to summarize it for you. The summary felt a bit short, so you asked it to say more. You reviewed these summaries before the exam and followed Gohar for more tips. You forgot to study for your exam, but you don't want to fail. Here's what you do. You don't have lunch, a study hall, or any sort of break to study before the exam. You're taking that thing as soon as you walk into school. So you do something clever to save your grade. Before you leave your house, you take pictures of your notes, upload them to Drive, and open them with Google Docs. This converts your handwriting to text. You head to settings and turn on speak screen, open the doc, speed up the voice, and listen to your notes on the way to school. Your teacher thinks you cheated on your test because you got nothing wrong. Here's what you did. So the night before the test, you used a memory technique known as the loci method. You gathered a list of things to memorize, in this case it was some chemical elements, and you associated each one with an object. You then imagined walking along some path you're familiar with and placing these items along the path. Then on test day, to recall the elements, you retrace your steps through this path, answer the questions, and follow for more tips. If your brother or sister is mad at you right now, go up to them and apologize right away. They have the power to decide whether or not you're gonna go to the Ivy League. Most colleges require 3 recommendation letters, 2 from your teachers and 1 from your counselor. But Dartmouth has an unusual requirement. They strongly suggest you submit a peer recommendation. This is a rec letter from a classmate, teammate, brother, sister, cousin, coworker, friend, lab, or even debate partner. If you break this one bad habit, your grades will skyrocket. When I was a freshman in high school, I would come home from school, hop on the couch, and scroll through my phone. Only 20 more minutes, I tell myself. Next thing you know, I was scrolling for hours. If you haven't already, make an after-school routine. You could come home from school, work for a little bit, and then relax. Or tell yourself in advance that you'll only relax for 30 minutes and then work for X amount of hours. I have an apple and a banana, and I'll give you whichever one you want as long as you can tell me why. I'll take the apple. Why? It's healthy, so is the banana. It's sweet, so is the banana. It's crunchy. Perfect. This is the mistake most students make in their Why Us College essays. They mention generic details. Instead of mentioning the world-class education, talk about the unique resources you won't find anywhere else. Prepare for this if you want to go to college one day. So back in high school, I'm chilling at home one afternoon. I'm done with my college apps, senior year is going well, and life is pretty good. All of a sudden, I get an email. It's a college asking to schedule an in-person interview, so I accept. A few days later, I show up to the interview, and one of the first questions is, what's your favorite book? This is a pretty popular question, so make sure you have an answer. Here are some pointers. You come home from school and can do your homework, chill, or sleep. What do you choose to do? You have tons of math homework you want to get through as quickly as possible. You choose to take a nap. No worries, you'll get started when you wake up.
What do you do though? You take another nap. But once it's 11 p.m., you feel the pressure and get to work. The key to finishing your homework fast and early is to feel this pressure sooner. Schedule time blocks to do your homework and try using a timer to help you stay focused. You arm wrestle your friend during lunch and he destroys you. Here's the lifting routine you use to get more fit. One day my friend said he wanted to eat better and start exercising more. So I said let's agree to start working out together. He was down, so we pulled out our laptops, went to Google and found a beginner workout routine. On Monday we marched into the gym and hit chest, shoulders and triceps. On Wednesday we hit back and biceps. On Friday we reluctantly hit legs, worked our way up from 3 days a week to 6 days a week, and the full routine is in my Discord. Ask any college student about their biggest regret, and you're bound to get one of these answers. 1, I didn't branch out enough, or 2, I focused too much on the college experience and blew off my classes. Here's some advice. When you first come to college, just know that it's so common to randomly go up to someone and introduce yourself. Also, this might be a bit controversial, but I encourage joining any and every club you find interesting. Once you get a feel for these clubs, decide which ones you want to cut out. Also, go to office hours even if you have no questions. You're bound to find a faster or better way of solving a problem, and you'll probably make a few friends along the way. Like and follow for part 2. Take the blue pill and you can keep scrolling through shorts. Take the red pill and I'll tell you how to find the motivation to start your work. Good choice. Now, I'm not going to say I was always motivated to do work in school. I guarantee that the smartest person you know isn't either. But one technique I use all the time is visualization. You can imagine one of two things: being done with your work and having the freedom to do whatever you want, or not finishing your work and facing the consequence of a low grade. I have a few more strategies. Follow along. Your friend says he has a higher IQ than you because he reads more. Here's what you read to get smarter. You walk into the bookstore and immediately grab a copy of Sapiens, but you realize that's not enough. You go to the science section and hunt down the last copy of A Short History of Nearly Everything. This book fills your brain with knowledge about chemistry, astronomy, physics. And just to prove you're actually smarter, you walk to the test prep section to grab the SAT study guide, the ACT study guide, and follow Go Hard. Can a college reject you for being too smart? Let's assume you have a perfect GPA, perfect test scores, and a stellar resume, and you've decided to apply to these schools. Now, Tufts is suspicious. They don't believe you would go to Tufts even if they accepted you. Why? Because they believe you're gonna get into a better school. So they reject you in a phenomenon known as yield protection. If you don't know how to swim, you're out of luck, because if you want to graduate from MIT, Cornell, Dartmouth, or Columbia, you'll have to pass a swim test to graduate. Dartmouth requires you to swim 50 yards, whereas MIT requires 100 yards. But why do these schools have a swim test in the first place? Simple. Swimming is a self-survival skill, and schools want to break the cycle of parents who don't know how to swim. And don't worry, if you don't pass the test, you can take a swim class. High school students today are cheating way more than they ever did before. Back in the 1940s, 20% of students admitted to cheating in high school. Today, that number is anywhere between 75 and 98%. And it's not just the struggling student who's cheating anymore. High-achieving students are cheating as well, mostly due to intense pressure. Unsurprisingly, 17% of the Harvard class of 2024 admits to having cheated in high school. When you first go to high school, you don't know anything. And it's tough because during your 4 years, you slowly realize all the opportunities you missed out on. There might have been a cool science fair you wish you were part of, or a writing competition you think you could have killed it at. And trust me, I went through this my senior year of high school and know how it feels, so I've gone ahead and made a list of some of the coolest activities I wish I knew about earlier. Link in bio. I honestly feel like half the students that do this program end up going to Harvard, Stanford, or MIT. Welcome to crazy high school opportunities I wish I knew about earlier. Alright, so this program is extremely selective. You need a minimum 1440 SAT or a 33 on the ACT, and it makes sense because I met some kids at MIT that did this program and they were absolute geniuses. RSI is a summer science research program that brings together 80 of the world's most accomplished high school students. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Business. You wake up at 2 a.m., hours before your competitors. Time to analyze today's markets. Shoot, they don't open until 9:30. You pass the time by rewatching Wolf of Wall Street, twice. Next, you take a cold shower and have a scoop of protein powder for breakfast. Ready for the day, you study for your accounting exam. This week's topic, addition. You get a 98, you forgot to carry the 1. After class, you put on your finest suit and head to the gym. You grunt as loud as possible to assert your alpha status. They kick you out. You call your father and let him know. He'll take care of things from here. Once you're back at your dorm, you rewatch the last season of Shark Tank, try to salvage whatever you can of your failing dropshipping business, and take a power nap to refuel for the next day. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Law. Your roommate slams a gavel to wake you up. The day is in session, he yells. You jump out of bed, put on a suit, and head to Starbucks. You grab 3 cups of coffee before class. But once you get to lecture, you realize the professor isn't there. It's your time to shine. You stand up and remind everyone that they're legally allowed to leave in 15 minutes. After class, you head to a networking event. A cop pulls you over for speeding. Do you know how fast you were going? He asks. Do you know how fast you were going? You respond. Before he can process your answer, you drive off. Once done with the event, you head to the gym, binge Judge Judy, read the Constitution, and head to bed. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Pre-med. You wake up and throw on a white coat. Why do you have one? No one knows. You're the first to arrive to Orgo lecture. Today is the big exam. Someone asks for a pencil. You say no. On your way out of the exam hall, you hold the door open for an old lady. You mark that down as volunteer experience. Next, you grab dinner while prepping for the MCAT. Shoot, your exam score is out. You burst into tears. You got a 98. You spend the next few hours prepping for med school interviews. Why do you want to study medicine? You think hard and long for a unique answer. I want to help people. Once done, you head to the gym, binge Grey's Anatomy, and head to bed. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Psychology. You wake up and drink an iced coffee. Physiological needs met. The doorbell rings and your dog instantly starts salivating. Pavlov would be proud. As you leave your room, you lock the door. Shoot, you're late for lecture. Once you're there, the professor says, if you're tardy one more time, I'll kick you out of this class. He hands back your test. You get a 30. You try to gaslight your professor for extra points. He calls you an insufferable little dunce. Heartbroken, you finish off the night by social loafing, psychoanalyzing the cast of Euphoria, and self-actualizing before heading to bed. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Engineering. You wake up to the Bob the Builder theme song. You look over your bed. It seems like your tools had a restful sleep. You spend the next 30 minutes deciding which hard hat to wear today. You go with yellow. Your friends ask if you want to get lunch, but sadly your schedule is a bit packed. After a few hours of understanding absolutely nothing during lecture and failing an exam, you decide you need a confidence boost. Naturally, you head to Twitter and make fun of industrial engineers. You then head to lab where you stare at CAD for 3 hours, and you end off the night by doing 5 hours of homework, sending Elon Musk his nightly DM, and heading to bed. I'm sure you've taken dozens of multiple choice exams, but most students use them completely incorrectly. They'll look at what they got wrong, be like, oh, that was so obvious, I was just being dumb, and move on. You have to eliminate hindsight bias. When you see a question you got wrong, truly reflect and write down why you got it wrong in the first place. Then write down why the correct answer is correct and how you'll avoid making this mistake again. Don't just think it, write it. You're the only one in your class who aced the last exam. Here's what you did. So back in high school, I came up with this weird technique called summary boxing. At the end of one of my history lectures, I drew an empty box below all of my notes. And I left it there. Only once I got home, I pulled out my notes, covered everything besides the box, and asked myself, what are the 3 main ideas from today's lecture? I wrote my answer inside the box, tried to do this every class, and used other tricks. Follow along. Before you go to college, I want you to do this. In August 2017, I stepped foot onto MIT's campus for the first time, and I realized something. Nobody knew who I was, and this was probably the best thing that could have happened. I had the chance to change things about myself without any fear of judgment. Before you go to college, think about what you want to change about yourself and what you don't want to change about yourself. Your parents have never felt prouder since you started doing this. So you come home after a long day of school and decide today is the day you're gonna get your stuff together. You clean up your desk, put on some music, and even put your phone in a different room so you don't get distracted. But there's one issue. You know where your phone is, so you're constantly fighting the temptation to go get it. Next time, go up to a parent or sibling, tell them to hide your phone, and follow for more tips. You're about to outscore all of your friends once you try this. So you have a huge history exam coming up, and you gotta remember the events that led to the American Revolution. Now, instead of using flashcards or reading your notes, you're gonna pull out a piece of paper and draw the timeline. Take a good look, because I want you to keep all the years but erase all the events. Now fill it out to the best of your memory. After that, I want you to keep the events and erase the years. Do it again and follow for another tip. Your teacher's impressed with your latest test score. Here's what you did. So before this test, you never finished any of his exams on time. He'd tell you to stop working and you'd be rushing to bubble in a few more answers. That's why for his most recent exam, you decided to create checkpoints. You took the number of questions on the exam and the amount of time you'd have and divided both by 4. And the night before the exam, you took a mental note of how many questions you should be done with by different points of the exam and followed me for 2 more test tips. You have tons of homework. Do you tackle the easy or the hard problems first? Remember, your goal is to finish your work as fast as possible so you can go back to more important things like scrolling through your phone. The technique I used back in high school was hard start, jump to easy. I would start with the hard question and work on it for as long as I could. As soon as I hit a mental block, I would jump to the easy questions. And when I had a flash of insight, I would go back to that hard question. If you have no friends, I have the solution. Over the past few months, hundreds of you have let me know that you don't have friends to study or work with. So I sat down one night and tried to think of ways that I could help you guys make new friends. And then it hit me. If you go to the all-new Find Partner channel in my Discord server and type in Find Partner, the Discord bot will find a study partner for you and put both of you in a text channel together. Link in bio. Your next report card is about to go crazy if you start doing this. So one night in high school while I was studying for a science exam, I noticed something weird. As I was reading the textbook, I couldn't recall what I had literally just read on the last page. So I took out a slip of paper, and after I'd read a paragraph or section, I'd cover it up. Now if I could summarize what I had just read in one sentence, I'd keep reading. If I couldn't, I'd reread and use another strategy. Follow along. Here's a difference between high school and college not too many people tell you about. Okay, I know it might be a little annoying, but in high school you are so lucky to have teachers who hold you accountable. Deadlines, attendance, they make sure you get your stuff done. But college is a different story. You will have classes where you can skip 10 lectures and your professor won't notice. That's why as soon as you have your first class and get that syllabus, load up your calendar and schedule in lectures, office hours, recitations, and exam dates.
Here's your dinner for tonight. 1 banana. Still hungry? Let's make that 2. Still hungry? Let's make that 3. You'd probably want to throw up. Wouldn't you much rather have this? Some variety. Well, that's how you should approach your college essays. Don't write every single essay about baseball or science or business. Show the different sides of you. One could be about your family, one about academics, one about a hobby, and so on.
For some reason, your teacher assigned a ton of extra homework tonight, so you might have to cancel your dinner plans. Unless, of course, you could somehow finish it faster. Here's a technique I like to call fixed before variable. In school, I quickly realized there were 2 kinds of assignments, fixed and variable. Think of fixed tasks as metal blocks. They take a defined amount of time. Think of variable tasks as Jell-O. They're a bit more flexible. Fixed before variable looks like this. Variable before fixed looks like this. Your teacher says there's 0 chance you pass her class. Here's what you do. One night in college, my friends and I met up a week before our final exam. We each pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down our current grade. Then we wrote down the grade we wanted by the end of the semester. To figure out what we each needed to get on the final, we needed one important number, the weight of the final exam. Once we found it, we used this formula to calculate our target scores and created our study plans. Follow along. Don't be this guy if you want to go to college one day. So a student sends a college essay for me to review. It's about his interest in space. It's a pretty solid essay until he throws in these 2 words. Unlike others. These words tell me that I'm about to read something incredibly pretentious. He says, unlike others, I often dwell upon the origins of the universe. He could have just removed those words. Avoid comparisons that put others down. There's a trap that thousands of high school students, and maybe even you, will fall into this college application season. We all know that college admissions is becoming more competitive, especially at top schools. So, in an almost desperate attempt to impress admissions officers, students will fudge figures on their college applications. Maybe 1,000 cans donated turns into 1,500, but to quote an MIT admissions officer, never embellish. This will blow your mind. So, you don't know what to do with your life. That's fine. I made a chart that'll make things a lot easier. So I thought to myself, how do most people decide what to major in? Very broadly, the answer is money and math. Turn your phone. So here we have 20 of the most popular majors. Now let's organize them in terms of math. And now let's factor in salary. If money's most important, look here. If you're not a fan of math, look here. If you're not a fan of the humanities, look here. Here's another chart that's going to help you decide what to do with your life. So the other day, I broke down majors in terms of how much money you'll make and how much math you'll have to do. But today, let's look at 2 different factors, popularity and difficulty. So again, here are 20 of the most popular majors. Now let's organize them by difficulty based on the results of a student survey. And now let's break it down by popularity. If you want a challenge not too many people take on, look here. If you want something easier more people do, look here. Roast your friends the next time they slip up like this in the group chat. So you guys are planning to go to the movies. Unfortunately, it seems like you're gonna be a little late, so you say, save a seat. Your friend asks for who? And there's the fatal mistake. Your friend doesn't know the difference between who and whom. If the answer to a question is he, she, or I, use who. If it's him, her, or me, use whom. I saw one of my friends do the unthinkable the other day. They were doing their homework from their bed. I've worked from my bed a couple times and I've never felt lazier or more unproductive in my life. If you want to do better in school, bring all your textbooks and materials to your desk, put your phone and any other distractions in a different room, pull up some lo-fi beats or an aesthetic background to keep you focused, and have a timer by your side so you can use what we went over yesterday, the Pomodoro technique. Here's how you're gonna ace every multiple choice test, part 2. Pay very close attention to this question. Test anxiety can be reduced by A. Relaxation techniques, B. Deep breathing, C. Meditating, or D. Journaling. To answer this question, we're gonna use the umbrella option strategy. Be on the lookout for a general statement that includes the ideas of the other options. This general statement is usually the correct answer. So here, that would be option A. You failed your last exam even though you studied. Here's how you're gonna ace the next one. So your teacher hands out homework and says something very important before the bell rings. This will be on the test. In fact, she says this every single class, so you do something brilliant. The next time you struggle on a homework problem, you jot down the question number and category and rank its difficulty from 1 to 10. You track these questions in a spreadsheet, sort it, and review the hardest problems before a test. Here's why you failed your last test, even though you spent 2 hours studying. In 2011, 2 scientists ran an experiment with 3 groups of students. I want you to guess which group had the best recall. Group 1 spent 5 minutes reading a passage. Group 2 spent 5 minutes reading the passage, took a break, and then reread it. Group 3 read the passage, then spent 10 minutes writing down everything they could remember. If you haven't guessed it, Group 3 had the best recall. So the next time you study, test yourself. Your teacher gets up to collect homework, but you didn't do it. As she walks over, you get more nervous. At this point, you can either scribble down answers, begin to cry, or run out the room. What do you choose to do? The reality is, most teachers are nice people and they want you to succeed. To submit an assignment late, the most important thing is that you reach out before the deadline. If you're honest about your excuse, even if it isn't that valid, ask politely and show that you'll be proactive, they'll probably say yes. Let me show you some Google search tricks you've probably never used. Type file type :PDF to make Google return PDF files. Use quotes to make Google return results with an exact phrase. So if you're reading something for homework and would much rather just read it on your computer, take a sentence and type it into Google between quotes. Now if the results are garbage and you want to limit them to a specific website, just type site : then the URL. And if the results are still garbage, join my Discord for more tricks. Guess which student has the higher grade? Meet Zach. He shows up to class one day, pulls out his notebook, and starts taking notes. As his teacher goes through the slides, Zach copies down every single word. Emily, on the other hand, doesn't start taking notes right away. She waits for her teacher to finish explaining each slide and then takes notes in her own words. Chances are, Emily has the higher grade, a deeper understanding of the content, and follows Gohar's guide. I had a pretty unrealistic teacher in high school. Like, she would assign a 200-page reading and expect us to finish it by the next day. Now, of course, when I didn't have the time to read everything, I would have to skim. First, I would go through, look at all the headings, and read the introduction. After that, I'd look at the first and last sentence of each following paragraph, I'd stop at bold words and charts, and then I'd read the conclusion.
So you have a meeting with your counselor and she hands you your grades. They're not as high as you hoped they would be. But you don't worry too much because you think your high SAT score will make up for your low grades. But will it? If you go to the Yale website, they settled this debate once and for all. Strong grades in high school may compensate for a lower SAT score, but a high SAT probably won't make up for low grades. Your friend begs you for homework answers, but you didn't know you had homework. Here's what you do. Your grade is gonna go down unless you finish your homework quickly. In high school, I loved using the predict and pressure technique. Before even starting my homework, I would predict how long each assignment should take and write it down. I'd be pretty harsh with these estimates. Then I'd get rid of all distractions, use a timer to pressure myself to finish each assignment quickly, and use other tricks. Follow along. You know that smart kid your parents always compare you to? Well, this man takes it to a whole new level. He got his bachelor's degree at the age of 14, completed his PhD by the age of 20, and immediately became the youngest professor in the history of MIT. Meet Dr. Eric Demain. His research interests span a wide array of subjects, from data structures for improving web searches, to the geometry of protein folding, to the computational difficulty of playing video games. His work is fascinating. College is nothing like high school. I just graduated from MIT this past June, and I can't even begin to count how many differences I noticed. In high school, waking up at 6 isn't too bad, but in college, waking up at 9 will feel impossible. In high school, you just join whichever clubs you want, but in college, you literally have to apply for some of them. Now, I've noticed well over a dozen differences, some bad, some good. Follow along as I break them down. Use this trick when you go to school tomorrow and watch how much faster your homework goes by. I loved using this technique back in high school because I realized that the only reason I put off work was because I felt overwhelmed. I didn't know what an assignment would entail or how long it would take me until I actually started. So the key was to gain some sense of control as quickly as possible. The next time you get a homework assignment, answer just the first question or write just the first sentence while you're in school. Can you get into Harvard with a 2.5 GPA? The answer is yes. Can you get into Harvard if you graduate in the bottom quarter of your class? The answer is yes. Can you get into Harvard if you got a 20 on your ACT? The answer is also yes. I know this because Harvard and every other college releases something known as the Common Data Set, and it reveals that Harvard accepted students with below average test scores and grades. How do you think they got in? How do you make friends when you first go to college? Today's story time will prove that it's pretty simple. So MIT has a huge frat culture, something like 60% of the guys are in one. So naturally, one of the first things I did in college was rush a frat. Sorry, mom. Just kidding. MIT frats are nothing like the frats you see on TV. So one of the events was Late Night Shake Shack. Without any hesitation, I go. And there I sit down with the group of freshmen and they all start talking about all the things they want to do now that they're in college. One of them said they wanted to start lifting. I said same. He invited me to the gym the next day. We ended up pledging for the same frat and we've been friends ever since. When you apply to college, you're up against hundreds of students just like you. The college begins to narrow the applicant pool, and 2 students remain. you and someone who is very, very similar. How does the college decide whom to accept? Here are 3 of the things they look at. Number 1, essays. Who looks more interesting? Who seems like the better fit? Number 2, demonstrated interest. Some colleges want to see that you really want to go. Number 3, interviews. Are you a likable person? Memorize these objects. 3, 2, 1. I'll test you in a bit. Back in high school, my math teacher challenged us to memorize the digits of pi. Whoever got the most would win a prize, so I went all out. Instead of memorizing the digits one by one, I used a technique called chunking. I memorized the first 10, then the next 10, and kept going until I memorized 200. Now pause and recall the objects I showed you. 3, 2, 1. Join my Discord for more tips. Here's a study hack that'll help you ace your classes this semester. I used this technique to prepare for my hardest exams in high school and even at MIT. I want you to go through your textbook or notes and jot down 5 to 10 bullets about the concepts you need to understand. Now we get to the fun part. We're gonna take advantage of the protege effect. Grab your piece of paper, stand up, and pretend you're teaching a class about those concepts. Here's how you're gonna ace every multiple choice test. The people writing your test questions are smart, and they phrase questions in a way to intentionally trip you up. The answer choices that are super short and include words like always or never are usually the ones that are wrong. Longer answers with words like generally, usually, or probably are the ones that tend to be correct. You might get the highest grade on your next exam if you try this study technique. I used it before one of the hardest Spanish finals I took in high school. So I took out some sticky notes and wrote down a bunch of Spanish words that I wanted to memorize. The different colors would correspond to different categories. I then took these sticky notes and put them on their corresponding objects. As I went about my day, I wouldn't let myself use the object unless I said the word out loud first. Another one of my favorite techniques is in my Discord server. Your teacher makes you stand and present to the class. She gives you extra points because you do such a good job. Here's what you did. You pulled out your phone days before the presentation and recorded yourself talking. You played back the recording and took out a note card. You tallied up how often you use different filler words. Very quickly, you noticed you had a bad habit of using and like. So you practiced presenting again but replaced filler words with pauses and followed Gohar for more tips. Your teacher wonders if you cheated on your exam because you got nothing wrong. Here's what you did. So the night before the exam, you weren't having a fun time studying. You needed to memorize a bunch of diagrams that were pretty complex. Instead of just staring at them until you felt prepared, you took sticky notes and sketched the diagrams without the labels. Now take a very close look, because you're gonna cover everything up, take a break, then come back and label everything. Here's how you can figure out the answer to any question on a test. What you're not gonna do is answer the question. If you're stuck, put a star next to it and move on. You have to become a detective and use other questions to find the answer. For example, which of these is a research method? You're not too sure what the answer is. But then 10 minutes later, you come across a question that asks, Pavlov used experiments to research what? Now you know the answer to this question is experiments. Don't let your teacher trick you like this on your next exam. So back in high school, my history teacher would ask true-false questions at the start of every single test. I wasn't a fan of these because the wording would be super weird. George Washington wasn't not the first president of the US. True or false? The life hack with these true-false questions is to honestly just assume the statement is true and try to find reasons to make it false. I'd look for facts that sounded right but were kinda off, or for words like always and never. Here's how you can avoid getting called on when you don't know the answer to a question. Look, it's great to participate in class, and you should when you know the answer. But I also get you don't want to look dumb when you don't. What you're not gonna do is obviously avoid eye contact. Looking out the window will make you look distracted. Instead, you have to look occupied. Start writing something or looking through your notes. Show that you're engaged but not available to answer. So to become valedictorian, I had to figure out one very important piece of information. How in the world does my school decide valedictorian? My guidance counselor told me valedictorian is the one with the highest weighted GPA. As opposed to unweighted GPA, weighted GPA gives you bonus points for taking harder courses. So the solution was simple. 1, I would take the hardest courses I possibly could, and 2, I would make special requests to see if I could take more than what was allowed. Your friends don't invite you to the movies because they know you're not gonna come. They text you just to make sure, but you're working on homework again. They're pretty annoyed with you. Your friends have been wanting to hang out for a while, but you keep doing your work at the last minute. That's why you need to start time blocking. Use a calendar app to divide your day up into blocks of time for homework, chores, activities, and more. Color code everything, add breaks, make time for friends, and follow for more. Your teacher calls on you on the first day of school. Here's how you become her favorite student. Now you don't sit at the back of the class, but you don't sit up front either. You sit somewhere close to the front. And your goal for this class? To raise your hand at least once, maybe when nobody else is answering. And after a week of classes go by, I want you to pull out your notes and highlight anything you have questions about. Try to answer everything yourself, but if you're left with something, shoot your teacher an email to show initiative and follow for more tips. I got Uber Eats at 3 a.m. one time in college, and it was a mistake. The restaurant messed up my order, and they closed by the time I could say anything. Instead of calling it a night, I placed another order from a different restaurant. I spent around $50 that night, and I don't even want to say how much I spent during the whole year. Luckily, I got into the habit of using my meal swipes, which you should definitely do in college. I also started tracking my transportation, entertainment, and food expenses in a spreadsheet that's in my Discord. Here's a 30-second hack on deciding which college to go to. Step 1, list out 5 to 10 factors that are important to you. Step 2, rate the importance of each of those factors on a scale from 0 to 10. Step 3, rate a college on the exact same factors, also on a scale from 0 to 10. Step 4, multiply each of these scores with this corresponding importance score and sum up across all factors. Step 5, divide this score by the total number of points that were possible, which is the sum of all of the importance scores times 10. Repeat steps 3 through 5 for every college that you're considering and rank them from highest to lowest. Like and follow for more. You and your friend become president and vice president of NHS at your school. Harvard loves the way your friend describes this activity on his application, but they're not a fan of the way you do it. Your friend writes, aided in the canned food drive, managed announcements and reminders, and so on. You say National Honor Society is a nationwide organization for high school students, blah 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 blah. Describe your accomplishments in the activity's description. Don't define the organization. School's around the corner. Here's how you're gonna stay on top of your work and get better grades. When I was in 9th grade, I'd come home from school and go on my phone. But in 10th grade, my classes got way harder, so I couldn't slack off anymore. So I made an after-school routine. I'd come home and spend 10 minutes making a homework to-do list. I'd then spend 30 minutes working on my hardest assignment first. Next, I'd eat dinner, chill for 15 minutes, then finish everything else. You grab dinner with your friends but drop ketchup on your shirt. Here's how to do laundry in college. Every week, I'd grab some quarters, pick up my detergent, and head to the laundry room. I'd pour detergent to a level 2 or 3 on the measuring cup and pour it into the washer. I'd separate my clothes into lights and darks, throw in the first load, then adjust the cycle settings to normal and cold. Then I'd press start and come back in exactly 30 minutes so a random person doesn't take my clothes out the washer. Then I would throw my clothes into the dryer, pop in a dryer sheet, wait for it to finish, and clean out the lint. Follow for more. Here's how you can enjoy high school and get into a good college. The mistake most students make, and trust me, I know how it feels, is to join every club they possibly can, take on every commitment in the world, and overextend themselves for the sake of college apps. The key is to find 1 to 4 activities you genuinely love and to stick to them throughout high school. More than 5 heavy commitments will probably be too much to handle. Your teacher taps your head with the ruler. You fell asleep in the middle of class, so here's what you do to feel less tired. Back in high school, I fell asleep once during class. Just once. I had stayed up all night studying for AP Psych. I put my head down in study hall and didn't wake up until the next period. I drank water once I woke up and realized I was probably dehydrated. So take your body weight in pounds and divide it by 2. Drink that many ounces of water each day and follow for more tips. You wake up exhausted and don't do well in school. Here's what you start doing to feel less tired. As soon as you wake up, you drink a nice big glass of water to get rehydrated. You head to the kitchen and swap out your old sugary breakfast with something more nutritious. You throw in some whole grains and some fruit. If you have time, you try to get some sunlight as well. When you come home from school, you work for a little bit and then go exercise for 30 minutes. You start going to bed at the same time every day, you limit your phone usage, and you follow Gohar for more tips. If I told you to make a cheeseburger, what would you do first? Before you grab the cheese, tomatoes, or lettuce, you're probably gonna grab the buns first. But before that, you're gonna buy the buns, and before that, you're gonna get in your car, and before that, you're gonna get off your bed. To find the motivation to do anything, including my homework, I would always find the minimum viable step. In other words, the smallest possible thing I could do to get started. I have 2 more tips, follow along. Here's how you're gonna stop running out of time on tests. What you're not gonna do is jump blindly into the test without knowing what the questions are like. If you do this, you'll probably tackle the questions very inefficiently. If your exam questions aren't cumulative, meaning you don't have to answer question 1 before you answer question 2, you're in luck. Go through and answer the easiest true, false, or multiple choice questions first, and then quickly think about how much time you want to spend on each of the other sections. Here's how to finish your homework faster. This technique was a lifesaver back in high school, and I even used it for tests, quizzes, and classroom assignments. You need to maintain momentum. Say you're flying through a test, answering every question, but you stumble upon a problem that's a bit tough. Your goal is to stay in the zone. Instead of stopping and dwelling and wasting time, skip the question, move on, and come back to it later. School's back in session. Here's how you're gonna stop feeling miserable each morning and get better grades. So back in high school, I had a terrible sleep schedule. On most nights, I'd be doing homework until 2 a.m. But in college, I realized fixing your sleep schedule isn't that hard. When you come home from school, avoid taking a nap. Try to get some work done. Stop using electronics about an hour before bed and go to sleep 15 minutes earlier each day until you've fixed your schedule.
Here's how you get away with submitting late assignments in high school. The worst thing you can possibly do if you're falling behind on something is to hand it in late and send a follow-up email. This gives the impression that you might have been a bit irresponsible. The next time you ever feel like you're falling behind on an assignment, send an email right then and there. It could be a day before the deadline, it could be 5 minutes before the deadline, but sending notice in advance leaves such a good impression. You're about to do better in school without having to study more. So researchers took 39 students and divided them into 2 groups, nap and no nap. At 12 p.m., both groups took a memory test. They did similarly. At 2 p.m., the nap group took a 90-minute nap while the other group stayed awake. At 6 p.m., both groups took another test and the nap group did noticeably better. If you have the time, take a nap. You might just do better on your homework. Two years ago, I graduated from MIT. Here's what I did in high school. In 9th grade, I marched into newspaper club and made it my mission to become editor-in-chief. I joined cross country, started a CS passion project, and studied until 2 every night. Looking back, I should have calmed down. In 10th grade, I emailed college professors and started a research project. That summer, I grinded for the ACT. Come 11th grade, I became editor-in-chief and hunted for a CS internship. In 12th grade, I grinded college apps and got into 6 Ivy, Stanford, and MIT. Follow and join my newsletter for tips. If you're a student, you have to start using this technique to get more done. So what do most of us do? We create a to-do list and plow through. But it gets messy and we don't know what to focus on when. Well, here comes time blocking to the rescue. It's a time management technique that even Elon Musk and Bill Gates use. It helps you stay focused, see how you spend your time, and it makes sure that you follow through on your goals. To use it in action, divide your day up into blocks of time and dedicate each block to a different task. Here's how you're gonna get on your teacher's good side right from day one. Now you're not gonna be a teacher's pet because nobody likes a teacher's pet, not even teachers. All you have to do is show that you care a little bit more about the class than everyone else. So at some point within the first week or 2 after you've had a good amount of lessons, shoot your teacher an email. Ask a clarifying question, not about the course, but about the content. Your next essay is about to be a masterpiece once you do this. So your teacher is not a fan of one part of your essay. Can you see why? Bananas are better than apples. They have more vitamin A, they have more phosphorus, however, both have lots of vitamin C. Now compare that to this. Bananas are better than apples. Although both have lots of vitamin C, bananas have 5 times as much vitamin A and 3 times as much phosphorus. For your next essay, vary your sentence lengths to break up the monotony, quantify your claims, and follow for another tip. Your grade in history skyrocketed once you realized this. So you walk into history class and take a seat. Not too long after, your teacher spots your flashcards and throws them off your desk. Stop memorizing dates, he says. I will never ever ask you to recall the date of an event. He tells you to use mind maps and flashcards to understand chronology and cause-effect relationships. He hands you a sheet with some other tips, but before he can finish ranting, it's time for second period, math. Here's the secret to raising your GPA without studying more. First, make sure your school does weighted GPA. My school, for example, gave 15 extra points for AP classes. Next, you want to take as many of the easy AP classes your school offers. And here's the secret. If your school doesn't let freshmen or sophomores take AP classes, put in a special request with your guidance department. Your teacher snaps your pencil in half. He tells you to improve your handwriting if you want to keep your grades up. Here's what you do. So you pull out a piece of paper and write a random paragraph. You grab a red pen and circle issues with your handwriting. You look for misalignment, which was my biggest issue, inconsistent letter spacing, and inconsistent letter height. Then you rewrite the paragraph, making sure the letters line up, have the same height, and aren't too smushed or far apart. You practice for 15 minutes daily and follow for more tricks. You accidentally pour in milk before cereal because you're just so tired. Here's what you do to get better sleep. After you come home from school, you have some dinner, you eat some snacks, but you make sure to stop eating at least 2 hours before bed. And about 30 minutes before bed, you stop using your phone. But Gohar, what if I need my phone to set an alarm? Get an actual alarm clock. On top of that, you might want to consider blackout curtains, a white noise machine, earplugs, and following for more tips. Your friend begs you to learn a new language so you both can travel this summer. Here's what you do. You grab your phone and download a language app to start practicing vocab. But there's a problem. You don't see these words in your everyday life. So after months of practice, you go to your phone settings and change the language to the one you want to learn. Better yet, when you watch Netflix later that night, you watch shows in the other language but turn on English captions. And when you get confused, you refer to these dictionaries or get help in my Discord. Your math teacher decides to be evil today and assigns a 10-page homework packet. There is nothing you'd want to do less in this world, so you somehow need to find the motivation. You and your friends could try creating a reward pool. Everyone puts up $1, $5, candy, doesn't matter. And then you all hop on a group call to work on the homework. Whoever contributes the least has to give up their thing to the person who contributes the most. This way nobody's trying to be last and everyone's motivated to work. Here's how you can make your classes go by faster. The worst thing you can do is to stare at the clock every single minute just waiting for the class to end. The mental trick I used all throughout high school and even a few times in college was breaking up my classes into 15-minute chunks. 15 minutes feels kinda short, so all I had to do was tell myself, get through 15 minutes 4 times and the class will be over. Here's how you're gonna get on your teacher's good side this year. So when you go back to school, you'll notice 2 kinds of students. You'll have teachers' pets, and then you'll have the slackers. In my opinion, you don't wanna be either. You wanna be at this sweet spot. You wanna be the student that's smart and cares about the class, but doesn't beg for points. During your first week of school, try to raise your hand at least once each class. And at some point, ask a clarifying question either through email or after school. Here's how you're gonna ace your next test. Set up 5 boxes. Box 1 gets studied every day, Box 2 gets studied every 2 days, Box 3 gets studied every 4 days, Box 4 gets studied every 9 days, and Box 5 gets studied every 14 days. Now take a set of flashcards. Every card begins in Box 1, and every time you get a card right, move it up 1 box. Every time you get one wrong, move it back to the first box. In 2006, a man named Clemens Mayer memorized 1,040 random digits in half an hour. He became the world memory champion, and here's the technique he used. It's known as the memory journey. If you want to memorize a list of faces, numbers, or words, imagine walking through a familiar building, such as your house. Place items you want to memorize at points along the journey. Imagine items on your bed, bookshelf, table, and so on. You will not fail your next exam if you try this study technique. Back in high school, I'd always try different ways to study, and I used this technique before one of my hardest history exams. So one night, I took out a piece of paper and wrote down the concept that I wanted to learn. Now, instead of looking at the textbook or my notes, I pretended to teach that concept to someone else. And within minutes, I was able to pinpoint every single one of my knowledge gaps. I'd then review them and sometimes use another technique. Follow along.
Bro, that test was a piece of cake. Here's how you're not gonna fail any of your classes this fall. You're gonna blend your study schedule. Humans are terrible at memorizing information. If your study schedule looks like this, chances are by day 7, you'll forget everything from day 1. Blend your schedule by covering a core subject each day, but reviewing it 1, 3, and 7 days later. You take your driving test so you can hang with your friends. Here's what the examiner makes you do. He makes you turn on the car but not start it. He makes you use your left and right turn signals, turn your headlights on and off, and turn your high beams on and off. Then he challenges you to turn on your hazard lights. Too easy. You then activate your windshield wipers, identify the front and back defrosters, disengage and re-engage the emergency parking brake, and then do the final challenge. You give hand signals for left turn, right turn stopping, do the road test, and follow Gohar. Your friend thinks he's smarter than you because he outscored you on the last exam. Here's what he did. So one night in high school, I was studying for a psychology exam that covered 3 topics. I studied all of topic A, then all of B, and then all of C. But this was a mistake. I started doing better on exams once I started interleaving. So instead of studying one topic at a time, I would do a bit of A, then a bit of B, then a bit of C, repeat the cycle, and use other tricks. Follow along. You just failed a test, and the semester's about to end. How do you raise your grade at the last minute? Sure, you could always study harder for the last few quizzes or tests, but also send your teacher an email asking if there will be any enrichment or extra credit opportunities before the semester closes. Worst case, they say no. Best case, they'll think about it and maybe even throw some out. It's midnight, you're getting ready for bed, but you realize you forgot to do your 100-page reading assignment. You wish there were some way you could just fly through it. Well, there is. You have to stop sub-vocalizing. Don't say the words in your head as you read along. You can listen to music or use your finger to help you accomplish this. Instead, and this will sound a bit weird, try to see the words as shapes, and let your eyes scan them as you glide over the lines of a book. Here's what I mean. Your friend sees you crying because of your last exam grade. Here's how she calms you down. She goes to the store to buy you your favorite snacks. She hands them to you and decides to give you a small pep talk. She tells you to look at your past grades and realize how you've aced every other exam. She says you're a genius and that one bad grade isn't the end of the world. She then makes you sit still and practice something called box breathing. After doing 4 cycles in one sitting, you feel a lot better and follow for more tips. Your friend doesn't want to tell you his grade because he knows you scored higher. Here's what you did. Days before the exam, you set up 5 boxes. You studied box 1 every day, you studied box 2 every 2 days, box 3 every 4 days, box 4 every 9 days, and box 5 every 14 days. All your flashcards started in box 1. When you got a card right, you moved it up a box. When you got it wrong, you moved it back a box and followed for more tips. Here's how you remember more of what you read and do better in school. I remember in high school I was up at midnight on multiple occasions trying to finish my readings as fast as possible. But come discussion time the next day, I couldn't recall a single thing. The key to remembering what you read and to therefore get higher grades is to take a break every chapter or 10 to 15 pages. Reflect and ask yourself, what are the main points of what I just read? Here's how you're gonna graduate at the top of your class.
Hi, I'm sorry I didn't see you there. I was too busy.
Succeeding academically. At most schools, it's about maximizing your weighted GPA. You do this by taking the easiest advanced classes. You'll probably do well in them while also getting that weighted GPA boost. But if you're not allowed to take advanced courses as an underclassman, put in a special request with your guidance department. Start doing this to save your grades by the end of the school year. Back in high school, I really wanted to be a valedictorian, so I would go pretty hard when it came to midterms and finals. Here's what I'd do if I were you. For every test you take between now and the end of the school year, look at every question you get wrong. Write these questions on flashcards and put the answers on the back. Keep all these cards safe in a pile, and when it's time to study for finals, bring them out, shuffle them, answer them, and follow me for more tips. You probably don't know how to read. Let me clarify. When you have a 300-page reading assignment due at midnight, even speed reading won't be fast enough. Here's what you need to do. Go to the end of each chapter, read the summary, look at the subheadings, and then begin to skim. Focus most of your attention on the first and last sentences of each paragraph along with any bolded words. Your friend says he's gonna get better grades than you this year. Here's what he does. Back in high school, I went and bought a folder for each of my classes. As soon as I got home, I grabbed my laptop and made corresponding folders in Google Drive. And because I was a tryhard, I color-coded everything using this exact key. But I went even further. I opened my calendar app and made 3 calendars: personal, extracurriculars, and academics. I blocked off my classes, exams, study sessions, and used other tricks. Follow along. Your grades went up because you were the only one in your class who cared enough to do this. So back in high school, one of the worst ways to lose points was by handing in an assignment late. Luckily, most of your teachers will hand out a super useful document on the first day of class, the syllabus. It'll give you every single due date you need to keep track of. As soon as you get home, I want you to take your syllabus, load up your calendar, or use my spreadsheet template, and input the dates for all your assignments. Your friend bets you can't finish your homework before midnight. Here's what you do to prove him wrong. You put your work on your desk as soon as you get home. You make sure your pencil, calculator, and other supplies are all out and ready. You grab some snacks, put time limits on your phone, and play some brown noise to help you focus. You count down from 5 seconds, then leap to your desk and start your work. Every 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and every 2 hours, you take a 15-minute break. And whenever you get stuck, you ask for help in my Discord server. If you study like this, you might want to stop. Say you have an exam coming up that covers 3 topics. The day before, you study topic A for 3 hours, then B, and then C. Now this approach isn't bad, but if you want to improve retention and potentially do better in school, use interleaving. Instead of studying one topic at a time, mix it up. Study a little bit of A, then a little bit of B, then a little bit of C, and repeat. You meet your friends at Starbucks to study for an exam. Here's what y'all do to ace it. You and your friends sit down, pull out your notes, and choose a designated expert for each topic. If you don't know who to choose, you go based off grades. Now everyone puts their phones away and begins studying silently. You can only talk when you have a question. Everyone else must stop studying and listen to the designated expert give an answer. Once y'all talk it through, you go back to studying and follow for more tips.
I'm sorry to say, but you've been diagnosed with CNT. Chronic note-taking. Symptoms include trying so hard to write down everything your teacher says that you forget to pay attention to the actual lecture, constantly asking your teacher to go back a slide to make sure you get the punctuation right, and irritating the kid next to you because you constantly ask, "What did she say?" The cure? Take notes only when you don't understand something, jot down the main ideas, not every detail, and join my live session, link in bio. Your teacher's amazed by how quickly you typed up your essay. Here's how. You were sick of typing slowly, so you learned this interesting technique called touch typing. You placed your left hand on these 4 keys and your right hand on these 4 keys. Then you made sure each finger covered a specific area of the keyboard. Instead of messing around until you remembered the key locations, you Googled typing practice. You chose a site, practiced for 15 minutes daily without looking at your fingers, and followed for more tips. Your first test score of the year came in. Here's how you aced it. So back in high school, I took a ton of AP classes, which was brutal. I spent more time doing all the readings than I did on actual homework assignments. As you do your readings, I want you to have sticky notes by your side. When you finish a chapter, take a sticky note or two and summarize the chapter without going back. Skim through the chapter again, add any points you missed on a different colored note, and review these periodically before an exam. You wake up happy until you realize it's 2 p.m. and the day's already over. Here's what you do to start waking up early. You grab your phone and turn on downtime so you can't use any apps past midnight. Then you set your alarm but put it on the other side of the room along with the water bottle. When you wake up, you're forced to hop out of bed to turn off the alarm and drink some water at the same time. Now instead of going back to bed, you open your curtains to let in sunlight, take a cold shower, do 15 minutes of exercise, and follow Gohar for more tips. As a student, no matter what grade you're in, there are 2 skills you should constantly strive to perfect. The ability to read fast and the ability to write fast. Here's a technique journalists use to write faster. Whenever you're writing and don't know what to say for a specific word, sentence, or even paragraph, type the letters TK, which stands for to come. Don't stop writing and come back to those placeholders later. The first sentence of your college essay is the hardest one to write. It's the first time the admissions officers hear you speak. Here's how you nail it. 3 things to not do. Don't start with the cliche quote, don't start with purple prose, and don't reference yourself in the third person. 3 things that you should do. Tastefully intrigue the reader. A sentence like, "I love throwing out the garbage" is interesting. Next, use your real voice and move on if you get stuck. How would you respond if your best friend asked you this question? So you guys have been friends for a decade, and now it's time to apply to college. You both decide to apply to Yale, and your friend comes up to you and asks, "Could you not apply to Yale? I don't want to compete with you." How would you react? This is what an MIT admissions officer had to say.
And it's not about comparing students to each other. It's not about looking at a school and saying, which one of the kids from this great school are we going to admit? It's really, is this student a good fit for MIT?
Look, I know you made this mistake last year, and I'm gonna make sure you don't make it again. You studied for your AP exams at the last minute. Today I made a 7-week study schedule, and luckily you have exactly 7 weeks until the AP exams. If you start using it today, you'll finish most of your studying by the end of April. But if you end up procrastinating again, I'll be back with a 5, 3, and 1 week schedule. Don't do this if you want to go to college one day. So a student goes to school and walks right by his teachers without saying hi. He sits in the back of the class and rarely raises his hand. He does this every day for years, until it's time to apply to college and ask one of his teachers for a letter of recommendation. But she doesn't know what to write because he didn't participate much in class. Yet she still wants to help.
She makes him fill out a brag sheet so she knows what to write about and found the template in my description. Your teachers aren't going to recognize you once you start doing this. So if you want to get your grades up, you're going to need to start getting organized. I want you to load up Google Drive and create folders for all your classes this fall. No more scrolling through a mess of random files. You're also going to use a calendar app and create 3 separate calendars. One for your personal life, one for academics, and one for extracurriculars. To top it off, you're going to color code everything so your calendar matches your Drive folders, which match your actual folders. You need to know how to answer this college interview question. A few weeks after you submit your application, an alumnus will reach out to set up an interview. College interviews are casual conversations, and not every college does them. But a question I had to answer 3 times was, what's your favorite book? Your answer should have 2 parts. Fahrenheit 451 is my favorite book because it explores the theme of ignorance and conformity. Throughout my life, I feel I've seen Would you rather work at McDonald's or Burger King? While McDonald's fries are better, it doesn't matter. Getting any job this summer is a great way to boost your college application. But you might be sitting there wondering, I want to study computer science. How will a fast food job help me get into college? Yeah, it might be nice to have a job that relates to what you want to study, but colleges are more interested in what a job says about you as a person. These are other jobs that showcase great qualities. You ever miss a couple days of school and come back and feel like you missed weeks worth of content? Like you'll have no idea what your teacher is talking about anymore. If you find yourself in this situation and have a lot of work to catch up on, do not start the work right away. Spend 10 minutes organizing the work from least flexible to most flexible. Least flexible being the work you need to get done by a certain deadline, and most flexible being the work your teachers will let you submit a little late. During the 1970s, an MIT student was reading through the student handbook, and he realized, hey, we can't throw stuff out of our windows. But there wasn't a rule against throwing stuff off of the roof. His friends were like, wait a minute, you're right. So they decided to drop a piano and start a tradition that continues to this day. Every year, students will find a piano that can't be repaired, stuff it with candy and confetti, and drop it off the Baker roof on drop day. If you look at a survey of Harvard students, you'll notice that most of them had 1 or 2 leadership roles in high school. And here's how you're gonna get some too. What you're not gonna do is run for an election out of the blue. I've been there before. Instead, when you're a freshman or sophomore, join a couple clubs, propose a small change in the ones you genuinely care about, then come election time, refer back to these positive changes in your speeches. Let's make a study playlist that'll save your grades by the end of the year. First up, history. We're gonna pull up some sophisticated classical tunes. Mozart and Beethoven are now your best friends. But once we get to math, forget about them. You're gonna listen to some electronic music to help you stay focused. For English, we're gonna kick it back to some lo-fi beats as you enjoy reading through Fahrenheit 451. And trust me on this, once you get to science, you're gonna wanna pull up some ambient space music. Playlist in description. High school is not the best 4 years of your life. College is a lot more fun because you don't know what to expect each day. My craziest story comes from my freshman year at MIT. I'm in chemistry lecture, everything seems fine, the lecture ends and I head out. But as I step out, there are literally 150 people crowding outside of the lecture hall. All I hear people asking is, was he there? Did you actually see him? I go back inside and I see Jaden Smith. You wake up late and don't have time for breakfast. Let's find something you can eat on the run. So one morning in college, I woke up 10 minutes before lecture, jumped out of bed, and shoved these cookies and granola bars into my backpack. They're good, but I should have picked something healthier. Now after lecture, I still didn't have time to eat, so I got some Chobani yogurt. These flip cups are fire, by the way, and some fruit that I could eat while walking. A couple hours later, I had time to get actual lunch, but on days that I didn't, I would microwave some mac and cheese and cry about how much I spent on food. Pink or white erasers? Let's test it. So let's go get some pink erasers and also these white ones since y'all keep telling me they're better. And you know what? Let's throw in these two for the ultimate test. So let's make a grid with light, medium, and dark pencil smudges. I'm not too hopeful about these, and yeah, they're pretty mid. 4 out of 10. Time for my suggestion, and they're not bad. 7 out of 10. And now it's time for the high polymer white. This is life-changing, and follow for more reviews. Say these 48 words to get kicked out of the group chat. So you guys are planning to hang out. Are we good for 5, you ask? Your friend says yeah. Whose house are we meeting at? You clean your glasses to make sure you read that right. Your friend doesn't know the difference between whose and whose. You very politely say, really? Whose? What? Couldn't pay attention in 6th grade English? Whose is a contraction of who is or who has. For example, who's ready? Whose is a possessive pronoun. Use it when you're asking or telling to whom something belongs. For example, whose house are we meeting at? I'm sorry, but you lost a few points on this essay because you kept making this mistake. So here, take these M&Ms. It's a decent amount. Now your friend comes along and asks for some too. Here's how many I give him. Does he have less M&Ms or fewer M&Ms? Fewer. Now let's say you're super excited to do homework, but your friend would much rather chill and just watch Netflix. You'd say he has less motivation. Use fewer when something is quantifiable and less when it isn't. School starts next month. Here's how you're gonna do well in all your classes. So you sit down for first period on your first day of school and your teacher already starts assigning homework. You have a 70-page reading due next week. You head to second period, same thing. Now you have 10 math problems due next Tuesday. My advice? Evenly distribute everything. Take the amount of work you have to do, divide it by the time you have, and do that much work every day. Should you do your homework alone or with your friends? Look, my friends are great, but I'd be lying if I were to say we were actually focused when we came together. It would be like 60% studying and 40% us doing dumb stuff. That's why when it came to big quizzes or exams, we wouldn't really study together all that much. But for those long and difficult homework assignments, we would definitely come together every week. Whenever one of us understood something the others didn't, that person would go up to the whiteboard and explain the concept. Your teacher might call you a tryhard if you study like this, but it might be worth it. So your grades won't improve no matter how much you study, and it's probably because you're studying the wrong things. So before a test, most students pull out their notes and review every single topic equally. Instead, you should prioritize your weaknesses. Create a spreadsheet. After each quiz, keep track of your mistakes by question type or chapter. Then, before the big test or midterm, make a graph of your weaknesses and target them when you study. School starts soon. Here's how you're gonna finish your homework faster this year. So back in high school, I'd sometimes put off my homework. But here's the weird part. Whenever I finished an assignment, it was never as bad as I thought it would be. The hardest part was getting started. So the next time your teacher hands out homework, answer just the first question or write just the first sentence right then and there. Then, as soon as you get home, keep the ball rolling and join my Discord server for homework help. I want to have a small talk with all you procrastinators out there, because I know the little mental tricks you use to avoid your work. You'll sit down at your desk, you'll look at the time, and it'll be 2:51 p.m. And you're gonna tell yourself, you know what, I'm gonna start at 2:55. But what happens? You lose track of time, it's 2:56, and then you tell yourself, you know what, I'm gonna start at 3. If you're doing this right now, put down your phone, start your work, don't wait for the right time. You've been doing better on your exams since you started doing this. So for the longest time, I'd go to class, pull out my notebook, and write down everything my teacher would say word for word. I soon realized this was an awful way of taking notes. Instead of trying to understand the lecture, I was more focused on scribbling everything down as fast as possible. So what I did, and what I think you should start doing, is take notes in your own words. Make them funny or interesting, and follow for another tip. Your friend wants to go out to eat, but you're tight on cash. Here's what you do. Within my first few weeks of college, I spent a ton of money on books, supplies, and eating out. It was stressful. That's why before you go to college, I want you to make a budget. According to Experian, one of the key benefits of creating a budget is that it can help improve your credit. A simple rule to follow is the 50-30-20 rule. Put 50% of your income towards needs, 30% towards wants, and 20% towards savings or an emergency fund. Share your budgeting journey with Channel Kindness at channelkindness.org and inspire others to start their own. Your backpack falls apart before the first day of school. Let's go find a new bag. So I walked around and found this one camo bag that I hope nobody gets because it's hideous. I'm just kidding. Go for any color, but make sure it has adjustable and padded straps along with the padded back for comfort. Go for not one but 2 water bottle holders because one might not be enough in college. And you'll also want 2 main pockets along with the laptop sleeve that doesn't hit the bottom of the bag. Most importantly, make sure you have a front pocket with smaller pockets that you can fill with some essentials. Follow along. I was on the phone with an admissions officer yesterday, and I asked her, what are some of the best college essays that you've read? She told me that one student wrote about The Office and related her personality to each of the characters. Another student wrote about a Coca-Cola can that was sitting on his desk and related it to the different parts of his life. But the admissions officer did warn that some metaphorical essays fall flat. So before you write about why your life is like a burrito, ask yourself if the connection makes sense. Let's find the best study spots. Okay, I came to a cafe and this place is a little noisy. Sitting here is just gonna make me wanna buy food. 5 out of 10. Now I'm outside trying to work, and although this is more peaceful, this pollen is gonna make me keep sneezing. 4 out of 10. So now we're at the library away from the pollen, and although this place makes me feel smart, these chairs are pretty uncomfortable. 6 out of 10. Now I'm back home and I'm working from my bed. I just wanna fall asleep. 2 out of 10. And now I'm at my desk with my monitors, supplies, and everything I need. 10 out of 10. Here are the 5 words that helped me get into Stanford University. I know these words helped because my admissions officer sent me a note saying she loved my answer. Back when I was applying, Stanford would ask applicants what 5 words best describe you. What I did, and what I highly recommend you do before writing any college essay, is to think about how the average applicant will approach it. So instead of listing 5 adjectives, I said go hard or go home. Your friend says he's jealous you've outscored him on every test. Here's how. 2 weeks ago, you started using the flow time technique. Every time you sit down to study, you start a timer and work for as long as possible. When you want to take a break, you stop the timer. Here's the catch. The longer you work, the longer the break. Less than 25 minutes of work, that's a 5-minute break. 25 to 50 minutes of work, that's 8 minutes. 50 to 90, 10 minutes. 90 plus, you chill for 15 minutes and follow go hard. What's the hardest academic achievement? Is it getting straight A's in your classes? Is it getting a perfect SAT score? Or is it getting into a selective school like Harvard? I think it's none of those things. I found an academic achievement so rare that only 2 out of 183,181 students accomplished it. In other words, 0.001% of the students. It's getting a perfect score on the AP Statistics exam. There's a class at Harvard that's so difficult that half the students drop out by the end of the semester. The class is called Math 55, and it's known to be the most difficult undergraduate math class in the country. Bill Gates took it, and it's usually filled with former members of international math Olympiad teams. In other words, some of the smartest math students on the planet. The class is like a full-time job, with homework assignments taking 24 to 60 hours. Take a look at a few problems. Good luck. What's the lowest GPA someone's gotten into Harvard with? I went to the admissions website and unsurprisingly they don't list that information there. But every year, tons of Harvard students take a survey where they self-report statistics like GPA, SAT, and class rank. If you Google Harvard by the numbers, you can find this information. And for the class of 2019, I found the 2 lowest self-reported GPAs, which were a 2.9 and a 3.3. Every single student on the planet suffers from this one issue. Once you confront it, your productivity and grades will skyrocket. Here's what I'm talking about. Decades ago, scientists asked 37 students, "Hey, how long do you think it'll take you guys to finish this really long assignment?" The average answer was 33.9 days, but on average, these students took 55.5 days. So before you start your next assignment, double your time estimates. Here's the study technique I lived by in high school to increase my grades and graduate at the top of my class. I used this technique for readings, homework assignments, and projects. Evenly distribute everything. If I had a 70-page reading assignment due in a week, I would read 10 pages daily. This approach let me do a little bit of work for each class every day instead of working on a separate subject every day. You're getting a call from an unknown number. Here's why you might want to pick up. In 2017, I'm going to the movies when I get a phone call. I pick it up, and a woman on the other end asks, "Is this Gohar?" "Yeah," I tell her, and then she introduces herself as someone from the Yale admissions office. What in the world does Yale want, I'm wondering? She congratulates me for getting a likely letter, which Yale sends to some students who have a high chance of acceptance. This letter was one of many weird parts about admissions. Follow along. Let's go find the weirdest school supplies that might be useful. Now I don't like big highlighters, but I found these ones with see-through tips. Sick. And then I found these whiteout pens that seem pretty useful because normal whiteout can get pretty messy. And then an aisle over, I found this flashcard holder, which seems pretty helpful if you always make a mess with them. And then I was shocked. For some reason, I always thought labelers were like $100, but I found this one for 30 bucks. Follow for more. The worst college essay I've personally read was one that tried to sound fake woke. The whole piece had a pseudo-intellectual feel to it that was super off-putting. The sentence that got me was, "I stood there being." Being as in existing. Unless you're a philosopher, omit your essay of any existentialist undertones. Let's go find the worst school supplies. These cheap mechanical pencils are heinous. They break all the time. I used pens or these pencils throughout all of college. 0.5 over 0.7 all day. Also drop the thick highlighters. These thin ones take up way less space. If you're above the age of 6, let's start using college ruled instead of wide ruled. And quick life hack, get a mini stapler because trust me, you're gonna need it. Get some nice pink erasers and follow for more tips. The year is 2024. I hand you a letter. It's your college admissions decision. What do you think it is? Let's come back to 2022 for a moment. Maybe you're not even thinking about college yet. Or maybe you've already planned out your outfit for your first day at Harvard. Either way, college admissions is becoming more competitive, so it doesn't hurt to think about ways to stand out. Back in high school, I got into 6 Ivies. How? I followed roughly 5 key principles. Follow as I break them down. I made a huge mistake by telling you guys that Walmart is more selective than Harvard. A few of you guys will not stop commenting it. So let's make matters worse, shall we? Here are a few more things more selective than Harvard. A flight attendant job at Delta, an analyst position at Goldman Sachs, admission to McDonald's Hamburger University in Shanghai, and a job at Google. Your friend is surprised you got an A on your latest essay. Last night you were telling him that you hadn't even started. Here's what you did. So after you read the sources and made an outline, you sat at your desk and told yourself, I'm gonna put out the sloppiest draft possible. I'm not gonna care about grammar or even accuracy. I'm just gonna go off memory and type as fast as possible. Only when I reach the word count, I'll go back, polish up my sentences, fix the details, and follow Gohar for more tips. This student made a terrible mistake. A lot of you guys ask me, Gohar, how will colleges know if I lie in my essay? Here's how I was able to tell with one student in particular. Let's call him Joe. The introduction to Joe's essay was absolutely beautiful, but the next paragraph was weird. It was choppy, it was awkward, it sounded like someone else had written it. So I took a sentence from the intro, put it into Google, and it led me to a Stanford student's video about their college essays. Joe plagiarized the entire thing. So I emailed Joe, but he was in denial. If you have a college essay that you haven't plagiarized, I'd be happy to take a look. So you want to graduate at the top of your class. You've signed up for the hardest courses, but now you have to figure out how you're gonna handle all that work. I'm gonna be brutally honest. In high school, I would come home from school and literally work for 4 to 5 hours at a time. But I recommend that you follow the Pomodoro technique instead. Choose a task, work on it for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, do this 4 times, and then take a 15 to 30-minute break. Your friend stole your notes and used them to ace his history exam. Your notes were so good that he doesn't even want to give them back. Here's the note-taking method you used. So last history class, instead of taking boring old notes, you split your paper up into 3 sections. As your teacher rambled on about the US Revolution, you took your notes here. Then, as soon as you got home, you pulled out the main ideas and wrote them here, wrote a short page summary here, and followed for another tip. Your friends might call you a nerd if you do this, but who cares? So you have a science exam coming up tomorrow. You've spent all night rereading your notes, but when the exam comes along, you forget everything and fail. So for the following exam, you don't just reread your notes. You take out a piece of paper and write the main concept in the center. You then add branches which represent the subtopics. You add more branches, ideas, concepts, colors, review it all, and follow for more tips.
Your friend doesn't sit with you at lunch. He wants to study for the exam next period. Here's what you do. You also want to ace that test, so you go and sit next to him, make him finish his food, and tell him to pull out his flashcards. You know that he failed chapter 1 and he knows that you failed chapter 2. So you quiz him with your chapter 1 flashcards. Correct answers go in one pile and incorrect answers go in another. You cycle through the incorrect cards until none are left, your friend quizzes you back, and you both follow for more tips. If you want to do better in school, you have to start using this technique. And with midterms and finals approaching, now would be the perfect time to use it. So whenever we get a question wrong on a test, what do we usually do? Oh, that was a dumb mistake. What was I even thinking? We make excuses. Before your next midterm, grab every test you've taken this semester and keep a tally of the questions you've gotten wrong, broken down by topic. Use this to decide what to spend the most time studying. The smartest kid in your class begs you for help because you outscored him on the last test. Here's what you did. So you tell him that on the last test, you try to go through all the questions as quickly as possible. If you were totally stuck on a problem, you randomly chose an answer and wrote down CG, complete guess. If you could only get a question down to 2 options, you wrote down EG, educated guess. You tell him that once you got through all the questions, that's when you went back to the EGs and the CGs and followed Gohar for more tips. What should you study if you want to make money? Look, don't let anybody shame you for studying something because of the paycheck. Sometimes you have no other choice. But you're gonna have to keep your nose to the grindstone because everything, and I mean everything in the top 5 is some form of engineering. As for the top 5 lowest paying majors, here's what we have. The full list is in my bio. What if after 4 years in high school you still don't know what you want to major in? And trust me, you're not alone. Will applying undecided hurt your admissions chances? No, if you're truly undecided, put that down. But consider these factors. Depending on the school, you might not be able to switch into certain majors if you come in undecided. Some schools might also have special scholarships, professional programs, housing, and freshman opportunities for certain majors. So you finally come back home from school, you chill for a little bit, and then you decide to start your homework. Which subject do you go for first? Do you choose the easiest one, or do you choose the hardest one? Assume you go from easiest to hardest. You fly through the first assignment, the second one takes a little bit longer, the third one takes even longer, and now you're exhausted and give up. But if you go the other way around, the assignments only get easier. Go from hardest to easiest. What do you want to be when you grow up? You are probably sick of hearing this question from everyone you know. And I don't blame you. You might be in high school and not know the answer. You might be in college and still not know the answer. Do you study computer science? Do you listen to your parents and become a doctor? Do you forget all of it and follow your passions? Choosing a major is tough. You have to think about pay, career paths, parent approval, difficulty. Well, don't worry. Follow along as I break down different options. You have an exam next period. Did you study? No. Do you want a good grade? Yeah. Well, you're in luck. You have lunch before the exam. Here's what you do. First, you get to the cafeteria and get some food because you don't want to starve. But as soon as you sit down, you pull out your textbook and flip to the chapter the test is on. If the chapter is less than 10 pages, skim it. Otherwise, read the chapter summary. For the final 10 minutes of lunch, you're gonna have your friend quiz you on the chapter summary and make you follow Gohar for 3 more tips. You have an exam next period. Did you study? No. Do you want a good grade? Yeah. Well, you're in luck. You have lunch before the exam. Here's what you do. First, you get to the cafeteria and get some food because you don't want to starve. But as soon as you sit down, you pull out your textbook and flip to the chapter the test is on. If the chapter is less than 10 pages, skim it. Otherwise, read the chapter summary. For the final 10 minutes of lunch, you're gonna have your friend quiz you on the chapter summary and make you follow Gohar for 3 more tips.
You come back home from a long day at school and have hours worth of homework. Do you start it right away? Of course not, you're probably gonna scroll through TikTok for a bit. But that 30-minute break quickly turns into a 5-hour break. How can you stop feeling lazy? Most people say that you should get rid of distractions and put your phone away. But how many of us actually do that? What you really need is an external force to hold you accountable. Tell a parent or sibling to snatch your phone and not give it back until you finish your work. High school students, it's finally March. Here's what you should be doing to get ready for college. 9th graders, keep exploring. Clubs, hobbies, study habits, set a solid foundation for the rest of high school. 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, plan your summer. You have summer camps, internships, research programs. Here are a few examples. 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, start thinking about those AP exams. 11th graders, think about whether or not you want to take the SAT or ACT. And 12th graders, keep applying for scholarships and wrap up those college interviews. And follow for April. Should you study in the morning or in the night? In the morning, you might feel the sharpest after a good night of sleep, some breakfast, and some natural light. On the other hand, some say studying at night might be more helpful for memory. Sleeping right after you study can help you consolidate new information. Some studies show that the most effective times to study are between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. The least effective times are between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. You know when you're studying something and tell yourself, hey, there's no way this will show up on the test? What usually happens? It shows up on the test. And then you sit there trying to think of the answer, you almost have it, it's at the tip of your tongue, but you don't remember. All hope is not lost. You have to leverage what's known as context-dependent memory. When you can't remember the answer to a question on a test, try and envision the room or environment you learned the piece of information in. Which majors do you think have the happiest students? Okay, so one hypothesis is the students who are gonna make the most money after graduation might be the happiest. So this includes your engineers and computer scientists. Another way to think about this is that the students who aren't crying about homework all night are the ones that might be the happiest. So instead of your engineers, it might be your fine arts majors. Surprisingly, a survey of over 4,000 students reveals that these are the happiest majors. Both kinds of students seem pretty happy. Who would you rather study with? Meet Alex. During lunch, Alex grabs your flashcards and quizzes you on the upcoming exam. If you get an answer wrong, he corrects you right away. On the other hand, you have Emma. She also grabs your flashcards and decides to quiz you. But when you make a mistake, she gives you a hint. If you make another mistake, she'll give you another hint. In fact, she won't reveal the answer until you make 3 mistakes. Chances are, Emma will get you the higher grade and follows Gohar. My AP Psych teacher hands out the first test of the year, 30 questions in 30 minutes. Most students barely finish. He tells us that by January, it'll be 30 questions in 25 minutes. And by April, 30 questions in 20. There was method to the madness. Parkinson's law states work expands as to fill the time available for its completion. Meaning the more time you give yourself, the longer you'll take. Give yourself a short time limit for your next assignment, and you'll be surprised to see how much you get done. I'm about to throw away my phone after seeing this. This is a year. This is the time you spend sleeping. This is the time you spend at school. This is the time you spend eating. This is the time you spend in the bathroom. And this is the time you spend on your phone. 4.8 hours a day. Notice how little of the year is left. If you cut down your phone usage to 2 hours a day, this is what you'll get. Get down to 1 hour and this is what you'll get. Follow for more.
I don't know if most students would do this. Imagine you have a 94 in math. Would you do a 30-minute extra credit assignment to bring it up to a 95? Well, consider this. A couple grades below me were 2 students. Let's call them Jack and Joe. Jack was number 1 in the class and Joe was number 2. How much higher do you think Jack's GPA was on a 100-point scale? 5 points? 3 points? Nope, 0.2 points. My advice, always do the extra credit. Would you study this? Let's see what we have today. Computer science. Your day starts at 9 a.m. Just kidding, 12 p.m. You pull up your laptop and watch the recording for the lecture you missed today. You play it at 4 times the speed and realize that Dijkstra's algorithm still makes no sense to you. Well, now it's time to head to 4 hours of lecture and take the machine learning exam you barely crammed for. Surprisingly, you do really well. You get a 40. Next, you head to the lab to work on your research project, in other words, stare at Excel sheets. And once you're done with that, you grind out some lead code, beg everyone you know for a referral to Microsoft, go to the gym, get some dinner, watch a movie, and go to bed. You've been lied to. How many times have you heard the best way to study is to do practice problems? Well, here's what a research study has to say. You have 2 kinds of people, experts and non-experts. Most students are non-experts. Now, when it comes to experts, they're best off attempting to solve problems. But when it comes to non-experts, they're better off studying solutions to solved problems instead of attempting to solve problems. You and your friend get your test scores back. They get a 97 and you get a 74. I would compare myself a lot as a freshman in high school, and getting a low score would honestly feel like the end of the world. But if I could go back in time and give myself one piece of advice, it would be to not worry about how others, including your friends, do on a test. Over the hundreds of exams you'll take during high school, a couple bad grades won't hurt. Your grade jumped up after trying your friend's weird study technique. So he was pretty stressed before his last exam, so he went to the chapter the test was on and made sample multiple choice questions. He took these questions, folded them up, and put them into 4 different cups. He then put these cups around his house. He put one in his room, one on the dining table, one in the fridge, and even one in the bathroom. As he'd walk by these cups, he'd answer the questions, and he'd drop to follow for more test tips. Your GPA doesn't matter. Look up average GPA at Harvard. Tons of websites say that the average admitted student had a 4.18. I hate this statistic because it means nothing. GPA isn't standardized. A 4.18 at one school could be a 6.32 at another. Colleges will focus more on individual grades and might recalculate your GPA.